Kalaflaya, good evening and welcome to tonight's bulletin of BCN News. Leading the news tonight, the Niue Health Department are this week finalising their preparation for the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine, Pfizer. BCN News spoke to the Acting Director of Health, who is also the head of Niue Public Health, Griselda Mokoia, about the latest developments in preparation for the vaccine rollout.
So the update that we have as of yesterday, the staff are now reaching the end of their online training courses with the Immunisation Advisory Council of New Zealand, and we hope to complete all of those by at least at the end of this week or tomorrow. We're also in the process of starting on our accreditation of the vaccine fridge that we will be using to store the vaccines for when we receive it, because of the cold chain requirements for for the certain temperatures that the vaccines should be kept in. We're also in the process of setting up our hospital in preparedness for when we do roll out the program, in case anyone develops any reaction to the vaccine.
Although no confirmed date has been announced, Ms. Mokoia says that if the vaccine arrives on a Tuesday, they will begin the rollout on Wednesday, and each of the vaccine cycles will run for 4 days. The Pfizer vaccine is administered in 2 doses.
There are going to be 2 vaccination cycles, so you receive your first initial dose and the second one 21 days after.
The health officials are also visiting the villages and promoting public awareness of the vaccine, including materials on TV, radio and online. Some of their promotional materials are delivered in 6 languages: Wangahau Niue, English, Samoan, Tongan, Tuvaluan and Fijian. An estimated 1,200 people on the island within the age group of 16 years and older are eligible to register for the vaccine.
We're encouraging everyone at the age of 16 and above to come forward and register, and also sign the consent forms to receive the vaccine. So in that also, in the process that we are intending to carry out on the day of the vaccination, is that when you arrive, we would be also do a little bit of screening, so checking the temperature, your blood pressure, blood sugar, and also specifically testing those who are at the moment on blood thinning medications or cancer medications to be sure that they are well before they receive their vaccinations. So after you receive your shot, you'll also be looked after by a team at health for about 20 minutes to make sure that you don't develop any reaction before you're allowed to go home.
Premier Dalton Tagelangi and Speaker of the House Hepatitis are both delighted at the announcement of the first Polynesian woman to be appointed Governor-General of New Zealand and her realm countries. Dame Cindy Kiro was appointed earlier this week as the next coming Governor-General for New Zealand. The Premier would also like to extend his best wishes to outgoing Governor-General Dame Patsy Reddy and acknowledge that she had witnessed milestone events for Niue during her time as Governor-General, referring to the investiture ceremony for the late Sir Toke Talangi in March of 2017. Meanwhile, the Governor-General's representative to Niue, the Speaker of the Whanake Pule, Hepatitis, in a statement to BCN News, he says that he is absolutely delighted with the appointment of Dame Cindy Kiro as the next Governor-General, saying that it would be even better when she decides to pay us an official visit to have her deliver the speech from the throne, making her the first Polynesian woman to do so. The announcement of Dame Kiro as the next Governor-General for New Zealand was made earlier this week by Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. And in other news, with the new instant fines about to begin on the 1st of June, the move has highlighted a gaping hole in the transport law for learning drivers. This is the Chief of Police, Tim Wilson, to explain.
So that's part of the problem with the Transport Act in Niue. So it's difficult because you have to be 14 years old to apply for a driver's license. But you also have to be able to drive to get a driver's license. So you have to be able to prove that you're competent behind the wheel to drive a car. You have to take a driving test. So the question is, well, how do you have somebody pass a driving test if they're not yet eligible to learn how to drive, or there's nobody there to teach them. There's no legal way under Niue law to teach someone to drive. So that's something that needs to be addressed with the law, hopefully, or something, because there's just no legal way to teach someone to drive so they can pass their driver's test and get a driver's license. And that's a problem.
Chief of Police Tim Wilson says that with the enforcement of the infringement notices and the instant fines, if a young person not yet 18 years old is caught on the road without a driver's license, they will still be issued a fine of $150, and the parents or the owner of the vehicle may also be charged for allowing someone without a driver's license to drive their vehicle.
The interesting thing about Niue law is there's no division between a juvenile system and an adult system. So it's all handled the same way. So that person can still get a fine. But what parents need to understand too is that if they're allowing their children to drive without a license, that as well is a crime. So what could happen is the child is given a ticket, and then the parents are also dealt with through the courts as well, because they're not allowed to allow someone to drive they know doesn't have a driver's license. So there are two ways to deal with that, or you can one or the other or both. So that'll be up to the discretion of the officer.
In response to the leadership impasse in Samoa between the FAST Party led by Fiame Naomi Mataafa and the Human Rights Protection Party led by Tuilaipa Sailele Malielegaoi, Premier Dalton Tangilangi has issued a statement to BCN News saying that we await the final outcome of Samoa's elections under the democratic process with its institutions that have been established to uphold the rule of law. We have faith that the leaders will resolve the matters through dialogue and the Samoa customary way. The unprecedented events unfolding in Samoa is keeping its judiciary very busy, with petitions filed and counted between the lawyers of both parties. Human Rights Protection Party's leader, Tuilaipa Sailele Malielegaoi, who's been Prime Minister in Samoa for 23 years, refused to concede defeat after the elections in early April, where his party won 25 seats, while the FAST Party won 26 seats. And in other major news, there has been much talk over the gift of an SUV vehicle donated by Mr. Tai Chi Fox and was accepted by the government for the Premier's use. Some people are saying that accepting this gift is inappropriate. Here's more on that story. Since the press release announcing the gifts from two Japanese nationals earlier this week, people have contacted BCN News saying that it is inappropriate for the Premier to accept a gift of a vehicle because it doesn't look good when Cabinet just received a fleet of brand new vehicles last month. Some people also refer to the fact that public servants are by law not allowed to solicit or accept gifts. BCN News contacted the Public Service Commission, who confirm that Regulations 52 prohibits public servants from directly or indirectly soliciting or accepting gifts from any person in relation to any matter connected to their duties or responsibilities. However, the Public Service Commission says that these regulations do not apply to elected officials, and so the Commission cannot comment further. BCN News understands that the Whanokepule had started to develop a code of conduct, but it is not clear whether this has been formalized or if this code of conduct includes rules on the accepting of gifts. Meanwhile, the Government Solicitor General Justin Kampala says that there is no law specifically to guide Niue on such matters as receiving of gifts by elected officials. BCN News has sought comments from the Premier on this matter. A total of 501 people on the island over the age of 18 have been tested for hepatitis B and C since March this year. According to Acting Director of Health, Griselda Mokoia, of those 501 tested, 8 of them had tested positive for the disease. The Health Department is again encouraging the people on the island to take part in this program to eradicate hepatitis from Niue.
Since the department has undertaken this project in March, we are still carrying on with our screening and testing for hepatitis B and C for those 18 years and up. So thus far we are up to 501 people who have come forward and completed their tests, but we'd still like to encourage everyone else within the age group who have yet to come to please come forward and get your test done as well, because the plans that the department has in place, we are anticipating the arrival of a medical team from New Zealand, those who are working with the department on this project specifically to eradicate hepatitis from Niue. So they're planning to come in the next couple of months and bringing with them the specialists and the equipment that are required to do the scanning for those that we have already indicated who have tested positive for hepatitis. So at the moment we have 8 people who have tested positive for hepatitis. So those are the ones that we would need to do further investigations for, and also do their specific treatment and management plans for them for when the team arrives on the island.
Griselda Mokoia says that they've noticed a slight slowdown in the people turning up to test for hepatitis. BCN News spoke to Associate Professor and Hepatologist at the University of Sydney in Australia, Alice Lee, who has been working for the past 6 years in other Pacific countries on the screening and treatment of hepatitis B and C. She says that getting tested is the only way to avoid the dire consequences of this silent killer.
Our work in the other Pacific islands suggests that the rates of hepatitis B are extremely high in the Pacific, and it's probably one of the highest in the world. Many people who have the disease don't know that they have it because they are completely asymptomatic till it's way too late. So this is referred to as a silent killer. If you know your status, then you can be assessed, and there are potential treatments out there that can be implemented, if not already available in Niue, to prevent the complications of hepatitis. And we know these treatments are safe and effective, and they can be life-saving. But you can only access them if we know what the disease burden is and whether you have the condition or not. So it'd be really, really important that everybody in Niue knows their hepatitis B status.
To incentivize people to screen and test for hepatitis, there are shopping vouchers for everyone who is tested and complete a form. And now your name will also go into a draw to win one of several $100 shopping vouchers. The program to screen hepatitis B and C is expected to be completed by July this year. So please go and get yourself tested if you haven't done so already, to protect yourself and your family. And in our other stories, the government has appointed an independent panel of 3 to review the production of power on the island. The panel is expected to deliver their findings on why there are intermittent power shutdowns of electricity supply and how to address these issues in future. Here's more on that story. The panel will be chaired by Billy Tukutama, former Director of Government's Public Works Department and former Superintendent of Government's Electrical Division. The other 2 members of the panel include Commissioner of the Niue High Court, Des Hipa, and also Fapoi Akesi, former Director of Community Affairs Department. According to the press statement, the panel has already visited and inspected the facilities of Niue Power and to familiarise with the staff and the scope of their work. The Director General of the Ministry of Infrastructure, Andres Johannes, says that it is the wish of Cabinet for the panel to study, analyse and report on the challenges of supplying and generating power to the island. The newly appointed Director of Utilities, Clinton Chapman, will be assisting the panel with logistical matters. It was not clear how long the review is expected to take and when the final report is expected to be presented to Cabinet. Issues around the delay of freight are not new, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, but it has frustrated a few of the mechanics on the island and affecting their customers. It's also understood that airmail has also been affected. Local mechanics contacted BCN this week to raise their concerns, saying that since the beginning of last year, they have noticed longer delays for their air-freighted car parts, and this has impacted on their work and further delays for their customers. The mechanics are saying that with the fewer passengers on fortnightly flights, this should mean plenty of space for air freight. Air New Zealand's agents in Niue, Pilenis Travel, says that all incoming freight are handled at the Auckland end. It is also up to the freight handler to ensure their cargo reaches the Air New Zealand freight depot in good time, especially for such things as car parts, because of the strict screening processes involved. If the parts are delivered late, then the screening process will not be rushed because car parts especially need to be inspected thoroughly. According to Niue Post, they have contacted New Zealand Post which handles Niue Post from New Zealand, to find out why the airmail to Niue was offloaded from 2 Air New Zealand flights this month. Air New Zealand have yet to respond to questions over the freight and airmail issues. And that's your bulletin of BCN News for this Thursday night. You have a lovely weekend, and I'll be back with you on Tuesday for our BCN Bulletin in Wangahau. Until then, good night.